How did I come to believe that the United States should confront regimes that suppress freedom? For me, it all began in my teenage years. Although I've spent my adult life on the East Coast, I grew up in Los Angeles in the 1950s. This is the high school in Hollywood where I first encountered politics. James Garner, he was that sort of dissolute private eye. Judy Garland. And there were big stars who went to Hollywood High School. At Hollywood High School, my best friends were the sons and daughters of blacklisted screenwriters and producers, almost all of them on the left. My friends were wonderful, passionate, idealistic. When I met their parents, though, who were affluent and discussed politics, often by the swimming pool, I began to have serious doubts. They were hard left, and their ability to excuse Soviet totalitarianism while expressing sympathy for the working class, it simply didn't ring true. Today, leading actors voice very similar attitudes.
As the dogs of war slouch towards Baghdad, we need to be reminded that as many as 2 million refugees could become a reality.
And when I hear our president state that to attack Iraq would be in the great moral tradition of this country, I can't help but thinking we are living in a world gone mad.
For as long as I can remember, the left has been obsessed with what it thinks of as American imperialism. Since 9/11, many of the most creative people in America have come to believe things I consider delusional. Instead of recognizing America as at war with a dangerous enemy, they think our own government is a force for evil, led by criminals and war profiteers. Encouraged by Hollywood celebrities and rock stars, this worldview has become widespread.
What we have in the U.S. today is a daily litany of fear, of terror.
4 years ago, the Hollywood director and activist Tim Robbins wrote a play called Embedded. It featured a character called Perle White, a caricature of me. Robbins has Perle White say, "Bless terror." He seems to think that concern about terrorism is just an excuse, a justification for starting wars and enriching the defense industry. Robbins' play, I'm glad to say, didn't exactly set the box office on fire. But the fact that intelligent, creative people believe this nonsense shows me what's really become embedded in our culture. Crazy conspiracy theories about shadowy forces hijacking government and manipulating the world. There are undoubtedly people who want to see the United States fail in Iraq. It's an unbelievably short-sighted reaction, because if the U.S. fails in Iraq, the implications for the world are serious and damaging. President Bush inspires passionate dislike in a significant number of people, some of whom are blinded by their personal distaste for him to the reality that we are facing a terrorist threat of huge proportions. I saw the demonstration in London in which an effigy of Bush was pulled down in a way that mimicked the pulling down of Saddam Hussein's statue in Baghdad. And I can't imagine what runs through the mind of people who appear to equate this American president with Saddam Hussein, who murdered at least 400,000 Iraqis and caused 2 wars in which more than 1 million people died. To the people who say the war against Islamist terror is impossible to win, I say, remember the recent past. Back in the 1970s, many said much the same thing about our conflict with the Soviet Union. Communist power was here to stay, and we had better accept it. I was fortunate to find myself working alongside President Reagan, who had the courage to think differently and to confront evil when he saw it. I first visited Moscow as part of a U.S. team negotiating nuclear weapons treaties. Today, it's a pleasure to travel around Moscow without anyone following me, just a tourist enjoying the relics of the Soviet Empire. We're standing at what used to be known around the Pentagon as the Moscow drag strip. This is the place where the heavy SS-18 ballistic missiles and the tanks and guns and troops would parade. Brezhnev would stand on Lenin's mausoleum, waving at all the indications of Soviet military power. Ronald Reagan was quite determined to challenge that power and to see the Soviet Union wind up alongside Lenin in that tomb. In the 1970s, Natan Sharansky was one of the leading Soviet dissidents. He faced trumped-up charges of being an American spy and was sentenced to 13 years hard labor. He was freed in 1986 as a direct result of the pressure brought by President Reagan and many other Americans. I met him in Moscow outside Lefortovo prison, the jail where he was interrogated 30 years ago.
I never was outside. I know this prison very well from inside, but I was never brought the entrance to watch how it looks from the outside. I think this second building which we see around us, I think that is the place where I was interrogated. And I remember how many times I was dreaming how I will escape that prison.
The left, and especially the peace movement, caricatured Reagan as a trigger-happy cowboy. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? But when he spoke out against Soviet tyranny, he lit a flame behind the Iron Curtain.
Come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
There was one great day in the Soviet prison when we received Pravda newspaper, and there is a big article condemning President Reagan for calling Soviet Union evil empire.
To ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire.
And that was a great day for us, because it was clear that the moment this Western leader calls a spade, makes it very clear that here is the struggle between evil and good. I remember how excited we were. You know, we were knocking by mortars from one cell to another. We were talking through toilets to our friends in the punishing cell who cannot read Pravda newspaper.
Dictators imprison and kill their best people. But our support for individual freedom can inspire brave men and women to resist. As I walked around Lefortovo prison with my friend Sharansky, I thought, perhaps one day Amir Abbas Fakhrivar will stand with me in front of his prison in Tehran, in what will then, I hope, be a free Iran, and that he, too, will speak lightly of the horrors he experienced. After Moscow, I traveled to Kazakhstan, one of many countries where freedom from Russian domination has unleashed a new society. We're in Almaty, the principal commercial center. At an international media forum, I met up with an old friend. Richard Holbrooke was Assistant Secretary of State and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations under Bill Clinton. One afternoon, we discussed the U.S. predicament in Iraq.